This video is going to be, I wouldn't call it a recap of the videos, the past 3 videos, but I'm going to add evidence today that what I have been saying, or at least suggesting in the past 3 videos concerning political and monetary shenanigans that has been going on, was not only has been from the Obama administration with Iran, but it also more and more appears to be with the Trump administration with Turkey. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to start with Ezekiel 7 to get the context started, I guess you might say. Now, we have read, actually, no, let's just go ahead and go to Deuteronomy 30 first to get deeper in the context. We'll get started on the right foot today. So that just in case you're not convinced enough that what happened to Israel in the old days is going to happen to the Gentiles, this should be enough to convince you. If what is written in 1 Thessalonians 5 verses 1, 2, and 3 is not enough to convince you that it's the Gentiles that are going to receive tribulation, just in case that Daniel 12 and verse 1 and 2 is not enough evidence for you, Deuteronomy 30, the words of Moses, should be enough. And as you can go and read for yourself in Deuteronomy 28, you have the blessing of obedience, and this is the old covenant. And then you have the blessing of, or the curses of disobedience. Nowhere in here, in this covenant, do you have forgiveness of Israel's sin and remembering their iniquities no more as a part of the old covenant. Nowhere. Okay? So, make sure we don't miss anything. And this is, and verse Deuteronomy 29 is when they made this covenant, when they agreed to the covenant. Right? So we go to Deuteronomy 30. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon you, the blessing and the curse. And they did. But it's not going to continue, folks. Not forever. Which I have set before you, and you shall remember, or you shall return in your inner heart. That's the circumcision of the heart, folks. After the blessing and the curse happens to Israel. You all call them to mind, you will return in your heart when you are among all the Gentiles. Jehovah, your Elohim, where Jehovah your Elohim has driven you. And then you're going to return to Jehovah your Elohim, and you shall obey his voice. There's no ifs here. Folks, there's no ifs in the new covenant. To lay charge, to command and order, now all that I have commanded you this day, you and your children, with all of your heart. Circumcision of the heart it's talking about here. And with all of your soul. Not then, it is because Jehovah, your Elohim, will return your captivity and have compassion upon you, and he will return and gather you from all the nations where Jehovah, your Elohim, has scattered you. Okay? If any of these be driven out in the outmost parts of heaven, or to the four winds, and indeed, that's exactly what happened. From there will Jehovah your Elohim gather you, and from there will he take you. Jehovah your Elohim will bring you back into the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it, and he will do you good and multiply you above your fathers. And he will circumcise your heart. That is the new covenant. And the heart of your seed, to love Jehovah your Elohim with all of your heart, with all of your soul, so that you might live a long, long time. And Jehovah your Elohim will put all these curses upon your enemies and on them that hate you, those who persecuted the Israelites, who persecuted the Jews, the Muslims, and the Christians. That's right. Namely, but not excluding any other Roman Christians. So did the Protestants. You can look at the book that the father of Protestantism wrote, Martin Luther, to the Jews and their lies. He was right up there with the Catholics, persecuting the Jews. Therefore, the tribulation is coming upon the Muslims, the Catholics, and the Protestants. It cannot be undone now. And you shall return and obey the voice of Jehovah to do his commandments, which I command you this day. All right? Now we have context. All the terrible things that happened to Israel are going to happen to the Gentiles. Do we not agree? So then let's go to Ezekiel 7 and let's find out what happened to Israel that is also going to happen to the Gentiles. Ezekiel 7. This is the hour of doom that was placed upon Israel. All right? Sounds familiar with the hour of doom that's going to come upon. It's not exactly the same, but there is enough familiarity here. The word of Jehovah came to me saying, O son of man, this is what Jehovah Elohim says to the land of what? Israel. All right then. Now we know that this is going to happen to the Gentiles as well. Moses said so. In the last days, when Israel is gathered back and Israel receives the miraculous circumcision of the heart. Not for Israel's sake, but for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's sake, and also for Jehovah's holy name's sake. Disaster, an unprecedented disaster. Behold, it is coming. The end has come. The end has come. Okay. Look, look, look. Look at here in verse 12. The time has come. The day has arrived. Let the buyer not rejoice, and let the seller mourn. For wrath is upon the whole multitude. The seller will surely not recover what he has sold while they're still living. They're going to lose it while they're still alive. For the vision concerning the whole multitude will not be revoked, and because of their iniquity, none of them will preserve his life. Remember, blowing of the trumpets. right? They have blown the trumpet and made ready, and no one goes to war, because my wrath is upon the whole multitude. Well, they will, like I said, there's slight differences that's going to go on, and you can read them in Haggai 2, verses 18 through 22, you will see. But this right here, the sword is outside, plague and famine are within, that is going to happen. You see, that's war. Those in the country, or those out in rural areas, will die by the sword, and those in the city will be devoured by famine and plague. Well, who's going to survive out of this coming great tribulation upon the Gentiles? The survivors will escape and live in the mountains. Folks, those of you who insist on worshiping Jesus, the false idol, the graven image of the Gentiles, if you insist on doing this, the best that you can hope for is run to the mountains. Mourning like doves that fled the valley. Each one in his own iniquity. Every hand will go limp. Every knee will turn to water. They will put sackcloth and terror on them. Terror will overwhelm them. Shame will cover their faces, just like shame covered the Hebrews. It's going to happen to the Gentiles too. And all their heads will be shaved. They will throw their silver into the streets. No, you can't eat currency, whether it's paper or metal. You can't eat it. Why? Look, look, look. And their gold will seem unclean. Their silver and gold cannot save them in the day of the wrath of Jehovah. It didn't save Israel. How can it save you Gentiles? Yet, you have people like Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, other radio personalities out there, and Zero Hedge on the internet. Oh, they're all over the place promoting, you got to buy gold, you got to buy gold. And recently, the Dutch Central Bank has stated that when a monetary reset comes, in other words, financial crash, when that comes, gold will fix it. This is what they say. No, it won't. Because you can't eat gold. They will throw their silver into the streets, and their gold will seem unclean. Their silver and gold cannot save them in the day of the wrath of Jehovah. It's not going to save you. To the politicians in Washington, D.C. and capitals around the world, it will not save you. And the gold that was stolen from the teeth of the Jews will curse you. They cannot satisfy their appetites or fill their stomachs with wealth. No, you can't eat gold. Because it became the stumbling block that brought their iniquity. Yes, the Gentiles condemn and curse the Jews for being money hungry. Well, the curse is going to come upon the Gentiles for being money hungry too. Now, folks, now we have even more context when I go to which one should I do first? All right, we'll go to Jerusalem Post first. Very strange thing happened yesterday. Turkey's Halkbank dismisses U.S. charges. Erdogan calls them ugly. U.S. prosecutors on Tuesday charged the state-owned lender with taking part in a multi-billion-dollar scheme to evade U.S. sanctions on Iran. What was going on here? Money laundering, folks. Istanbul, Turkey's Halkbank said on Wednesday the U.S. charges against it amounts to an escalation of Washington sanctions on Ankara over its military incursion in Syria, while President Erdogan called them unlawful, ugly step. U.S. prosecutors on Tuesday charged the state-owned lender with taking part in a multi-billion-dollar scheme to evade U.S. sanctions on Iran. In response, Halkbank shares plunged as much as 7% on Wednesday despite a new ban on short selling. Now, I don't think the Jerusalem Post tells the public which U.S. prosecutors brought these charges. That is very interesting, and that answer is in the Daily Beast in the next article that I'm going to read. The indictment came after the United States imposed sanctions on Turkish officials, hiked tariffs, and halted trade talks in an effort to persuade Turkey to stop attacks against the Kurdish YPG militia in northeastern Syria. I don't think that the tariffs were hiked yet. I do believe that the sanctions, they had talked about imposing sanctions on Turkish officials. They may have done it, but so far there has not been an arms sale ban on Turkey in the United States, but there has been from the UK, from Spain, from Italy, from Sweden, and from France. So far, no arms sales ban from the United States. And it's looking like the United States is slow-walking this ban and is also slow-walking sanctions. We'll see. Okay, so Jerusalem Post does indeed have where this indictment came from. This is very interesting. The indictment in a U.S. District Court in New York. The New York District Courts are not friendly to the current U.S. administration. Just keep that in the back of your mind as I'm reading through these two articles, which further strain ties between the NATO allies. Now, folks, as I pointed out in some articles in the last few days, the Trump administration does not want ties with Turkey to be strained. And you will see in another article that I'm going to read, alleges Turkey's second largest state bank conducted fraud, money laundering, and other sanctions offenses. While the U.S. District Attorney did not tie the charges to sanctions over Syria, Halkbank did. The Halkbank exposed themselves. Very interesting. These were filed as a part of the sanctions introduced against our country by the U.S. government in response to Operation Peace Spring, heroically launched by the Turkish army to secure our borders and establish peace. Here we go with that word again, peace. In the region, the bank said, of the incursion now in its 8th day. Halkbank said it did not engage in sanctions violations as alleged and falls outside the U.S. Department of Justice's jurisdiction since it has no branches or employees in the United States. Therefore, the decision to indict is an unprecedented legal overreach. The case against Halkbank, Here we go, folks. This is where it gets interesting. Follows. Where does it go? Oh, come on. Now I got to go and find this again. What will happen? Here we go. The case against Halkbank follows from a previous criminal case that came to light in 2016 against Turkish-Iranian gold trader. Remember, I was talking about this for the past week? Reza Zareb, who was accused of playing a central role in the sanctions evasion scheme. Here we go. Remember what I said about Turkish gold. Remember what it says in Ezekiel 7. That the gold and the silver was a stumbling block that caused iniquity. And now we see that Jewish gold, stolen from the teeth of the Jews in concentration camps, has become a stumbling block on the Gentiles that cause iniquity. Not just any iniquity, the kind of iniquity that gets the attention of the creator of the universe. As you can plainly see in Ezekiel 7. Mehmet Hakan Attila, a former Halkbank deputy general manager, was arrested in New York the following year and was later sentenced to 32 months in prison. He returned to Turkey in July after serving out a sentence. Zareb pleaded guilty and testified for U.S. prosecutors. He said Iran, with the help of Halkbank and Turkish government officials, including the Turkish president, used a web of shell companies and sham transactions in gold, food, and medicine to sidestep U.S. sanctions. Turkey cast that case as a political plot against Erdogan's government and said it was an extension of a 2013 domestic corruption investigation, which Ankara says was launched by the network of Fethullah Gulen, a U.S.-based Muslim cleric. Erdogan told reporters in Ankara that Halkbank issue was supposedly closed, but they have now taken an unlawful, ugly step with the southern New York prosecutors opening it again. Oh, it was closed, was it? I wonder why. Let's go to the Daily Beast. Make sure that I'm at the correct article. I believe it's this one right here. Giuliani told Trump to extradite Erdogan Muslim cleric to Turkey, said report. Well, we have competing interests going on here in the U.S., do we not? Between Erdogan and Fethullah Gulen. Rudy Giuliani urged President Trump to extradite a Muslim cleric to Turkey, where he is wanted for allegedly plotting a coup attempt against Erdogan. According to the Washington Post, Giuliani reportedly told Trump in 2017 that he should grant Erdogan's wishes to extradite Fethullah Gulen, a permanent U.S. resident who lives in exile in Pennsylvania, to Turkey. Gulen has always denied any involvement in the 2016 plot against Erdogan. Giuliani's reported overtures to Trump appear to another example of him pushing a shadowy foreign policy from outside government. One former official described the Gulen subject as Giuliani's hobby horse at the time, and some White House aides reportedly became concerned that Giuliani was making the case on behalf of Erdogan's government. One former administration official recalled Trump asked why Gulen couldn't be turned over to Turkey and referred to Erdogan as my friend. Now, I know this came from the Washington Post, and I know that the Washington Post needs to be looked at as a partisan paper. We also know that the Southern District of New York is also politically partisan. Now, here's the thing though. If you don't deal in these kinds of things, chances are you probably won't get caught. Now, here back in the Jerusalem Post article, before Turkish markets opened, authorities banned short selling on 7 large Turkish bank stocks, including Halkbank. Selling shares in the banks only to buy them later in the session was also banned. State banks, which have sold dollars to defend the lira since the Syrian incursion began last week, were on Wednesday squeezing funds in an offshore FX swaps market to cushion the blow from Halkbank indictment, a bond trader said. Halkbank stock nonetheless fell as much as 7.2% at the opening and was down 5.2% at 11:37 general or meantime. The main banking index, which has fallen more than 16% this month on fears of U.S. repercussions, was down 2.4%, while Turkey's broader stock index was off 1.3%. So they're just giving statistics here. So while the Trump administration appeared to be slow-walking what do you call that? Sanctions against Turkey. They announced that they're planning on having sanctions. They announced it on Monday, I believe it was. Yes. And then Tuesday came and nothing happened. And then today came and still nothing happened. They're talking about sanctions on Turkish steel and some other things. And basically sanctioning the defense minister, another minister, three ministers, but not the president of Turkey. That is the first one they should have sanctioned, in my opinion. And then, of course, looks to me that because they were slow-walking this thing, the Southern District of New York Federal Prosecutor's Office decides to, well, move things along, shall we say. Now, let's not forget that the Obama administration, during the Obama administration, I'm sorry, I don't want to say the wrong thing here. During the Obama administration, that was when the coup attempt against Erdogan took place. And Russia, Vladimir Putin himself called Erdogan, warning him what was about to take place. And of course, Erdogan went and took off somewhere into safety and was able to, because of Vladimir Putin, was able to stop the coup. And Erdogan blamed the Obama administration for it. And he was demanding the Obama administration turn over Fethullah Gulen, and even started the process of holding the military personnel at Incirlik base, Air Force Base in Turkey, as hostage. I think they even moved some of the nukes. There was like 90-some nukes at that particular base. They moved some of them to Romania. About 50 of them still exist in the Turkish base. So we have competing interests going on here, but you see, here's the problem. The competing interest, the Democrats seem to want to make deals with Iran, while the Republican administration want to make deals with Turkey. They are all intertwined together by one man, the gold trader. The gold trader. Reza Zarrab. He's both Iranian and Turkish. We have a big, big problem in Washington, D.C. The conservative side thought they got rid of their problem by finally getting rid of Barack Obama and not allowing Hillary Clinton to take power. And what we have here is back then we had Iran influencing foreign policy concerning Israel with the Obama administration, and now we have Turkey influencing foreign policy in the Middle East. Once again, affecting Israel, leaving Israel vulnerable. Back during the Obama administration, Iran was essentially allowed into the Syrian sphere of war. So then you had, in the Ezekiel 38-39 war scenario, you had Iran entered into the picture, and it is written. We'll go to Ezekiel 38, it's right here. It is written right there, Persia. Okay, so they entered the picture thanks to the Obama administration. Now, thanks to the Trump administration, Turkey has entered into the Syrian war sphere. Who are they? Who is Turkey? Who do they represent in the Ezekiel 38 war? We have exposed Gog, as you can look up Gogland today, and you will see that it is Russian property in the, what is that sea between, I think it's in the Arctic Sea, between Sweden and Russia. Russia owns it, and it's building a Navy base or an air base there right now. And it used to be considered Georgia, the Republic of Georgia. But anyway, it says Rosh, or as you know, that's in Hebrew, it would be pronounced Rosh or Rosh. In the how do we call it? In the Eastern European languages like Russia and Hungary and all that, it would be pronounced Russia, or Ukraine, Russia. Or in the more anglicized version, it would be Russia. And it means chief, the head, the boss, right? Of Meshech and Tubal, the boss of Meshech and Tubal, and of course many believe that Moscow is Meshech today, and Tubal, of course, is the capital city of Georgia. And I will cause you to return and put hooks in your jaws and bring you forth. horses, horsemen, and all them, whatever, right? Persia, Kush, or that's interchangeable between African countries or Hindu Kush. And yes, the Hindu Kush countries are involved. They're a part of Hezbollah and Iran's proxy armies. And of Put as well, North Africa with them. Gomer. Now, Gomer is the father of Ashkenaz, which is mainly Europe. Gomer is also the father of Togarmah. So when you see Gomer there, right, you're going to have to include Ashkenaz, because Gomer is the father of Togarmah and Ashkenaz. Also the father of Riphtha. Now, Riphtha, that's where the Celtic people came from, or most of them. Or Riphith. I don't remember how to spell that name. Okay, say that name. Okay, but, so, who is the house of Togarmah? Who's that? Of the extreme north, and all his bands and many people with him. All right? So there's going to be a whole big army coming from the house of Togarmah. Let's look. Togarmah. Togarmah is a figure in the table of nations, listed in census of Noah, that represents peoples known to the ancient Hebrews. Togarmah is among the descendants of Japheth and thought to represent some people located in what? Anatolia. That's right, folks. Anatolia, and yesterday we read in Revelation. Did we not? Sixth angel. Verse 16 and verse 12. Strong's Concordance. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, so that the way of the king, the ruler of Anatolia, might be prepared, or the roads of the king of Anatolia. Might be prepared. Okay. House of Togarmah. Further evidence. Oh, I accidentally got rid of my... Here we go. Hold on. Okay. So, what we have here is Anatolia. Medieval traditions variously claim Togarmah as the mythical ancestor of people in the Caucasus and Western Asia, including the Georgians, the Armenians, and some Turkic peoples. All right? Turkic peoples are a collection of ethno-linguistic groups of Central, Eastern, Northern, and Western Asia, as well as parts of Europe and North Africa. The origins of the Turkic peoples are to be found with peoples who lived, who live in present-day South Siberia, Mongolia, while the roots of these people, they're scattered pretty much, but this was the land of Togarmah. All right, Togarmah is listed in Genesis 12, verse 10, verse 3 as a third son of Gomer. Gomer was the eldest son of Japheth, father of Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. All right. The name is again mentioned in the book of Ezekiel as a nation from the far north. Ezekiel 36 verse 8 mentions Togarmah together with Tubal as supplying soldiers for the army of Gog. Ezekiel 27 verse 14 mentions Togarmah together with Tubal, Yerevan, and Meshech as supplying horses to the Tyrans, people of Tyre. Most scholars identify Togarmah with the capital city called Togarmah by the Hittites. So the Hittites called the capital city of Togarmah Togarmah, and Togarmah by the Assyrians. O.R. Gurney places Togarmah in southeast Anatolia. Let's look at the map. Southeast of Anatolia is where? Right here. Right butting up to the Euphrates River. Is there any question now in Ezekiel 38 that yet another puzzle in the piece of the Ezekiel 38 war has fallen into place? Is there any doubt now? So according to, let's see if I can go to Debka file. I wish I had, here we go. I think it might have been this one. I'm not sure, but there was an article that showed how Putin placed his troops between the armies of Turkey and the armies of Syria, telling them not to fight against each other. He literally did that yesterday. Now, this particular article, I don't know why it's not pulling up, points out a very raw fact. The task of stopping Turkey passes from Trump to Putin. Syrian army defends threatened Kurdish towns. President Donald Trump's decision to pull U.S. troops back from the Turkish-Kurdish confrontation on Sunday, October 13th, produced a lightning realignment of big power strengths on the battlefield of northeast Syria. The task of protecting the Kurds from the excesses of the Turkish operation passed to Vladimir Putin and the Syrian army. By Monday, Syrian government forces had reached the Kurdish-held towns of Kobani, Manbij, and Raqqa as Turkish troops were poised to move in against the first two. According to some reports, the Syrian army was already inside those towns, but, says Debka File's military sources, it can't hold out against a Turkish advance without Russian support. The wheels for this turnabout, as Debka File predicted on Saturday, were set in motion by a deal struck by the Kurdish leaders of the U.S.-backed Syrian Defense Forces with Assad regime officials at the Russian command center in the Khyman air base near Latakia. Their meetings were chaired by Russian officers. Feeling abandoned by the U.S. pullback, the Kurds quickly agreed to relinquish their struggle for an independent state and settle for autonomous status for their northeastern provinces in return for the Syrian army taking over the defense of their endangered towns. The deal, which took effect within 24 hours, still has rough edges to be smoothed out, such as, number one, the exact nature of Kurdish autonomous rule and relations with central government in Damascus. Number two, the borders of Kurdish-ruled lands. Number three, the fate of the SDF. Number four, how far will Russia President Vladimir Putin be willing to push back against the Turkish President Erdogan for halting his army's advance into northern Syria? All right. Trump ordered American troops in northern Syria to move east, out of the way of a potential clash over the Kurdish regions, up to the areas adjoining the Iraqi border. Already now, since Syria's government is not up to the full-scale battle with Turkish army without Russian army and air force support. Turkey and Russian stand at the threshold of a major military clash. But will they? No, not yet. Not yet, because you see, Scripture has to be fulfilled first. And then they will clash. Then they will clash? Yes, they will. Yes, they will. But they have to try to invade Israel first. Now they say, how Putin handles a standoff is open to question. He may be able to resolve it by giving Erdogan a quiet ultimatum to back off or face direct hostilities with the Russian army. Meanwhile, the Russian leader comes out of the mess created by the Turkish operation, having attained the overriding goal of his intervention in the Syrian conflict to bring all parts of the country under the central rule of Assad regime. All right. So I may have to Google this. I saw this article yesterday. I hope I can find it. Well, it's on the Washington Post. It was not the source that I was looking for. Or you can look at The Guardian. All right, I'll go to the Washington Post because it says Russia patrolling between Turkish and Syrian forces after troops withdrawal, U.S. troops withdrawal. So, Russia announced Tuesday that its units were patrolling between Turkish and Syrian military forces near the strategically important Syrian town of Manbij, and a sign that Moscow, a key ally of the Syrian government, was moving to fill the security vacuum after U.S. troops withdrew from the area. Now, as you can see, and it says the Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement that military police in northwestern Manbij were patrolling along the line of contact between Syria and Turkey, with a senior Russian official saying Moscow was working to prevent a confrontation between them. Yes, Russia is now the boss of this operation. Literally, Russia, as written in Ezekiel 38, is the chief, is the boss now. Right here. Russia. Now, while this incident right here is taking place, you see, it says they don't know. They don't know that they're being dragged into the Holy Land. They don't know this. And as you can tell right now, they don't believe it yet. I thought they might have 6 months ago. I thought that Russia might have, but because they got their eyes on the Golan Heights, but but the piece of the puzzle, the House of Togarmah, was not in place yet. This one right here. Now, it doesn't specifically mention Ashkenaz, but Ashkenaz is, if you look in Ezekiel 39, are a lot of the folks that dwell safely and carelessly in the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea, as we see in Ezekiel 38. Those are mostly Ashkenaz, where I'll send a fire on Magog and among those that dwell carelessly in the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea. You see. So is Ashkenaz a part of this puzzle? Well, it's not mentioned here. It's only implicated in the next chapter. So maybe not. House of Togarmah has just fallen into the puzzle And it's very possible, folks, that the puzzle may now be filled up. And the picture might now be very clear. So, if the puzzle is finished, and I don't know that of a certainty, what is next? They do not know that that a trap was laid for them. They do not know that they have hooks in their jaws. They just don't know. It says, at that same time shall things come into your mind. You shall think an evil thought. You will say, I will go to the land of unwalled villages. Jerusalem is not a land of unwalled villages. The Golan Heights all the way down to the Jezreel Valley, they are the land of unwalled villages. And the Jezreel Valley is right at the foot of Armageddon, Har Megiddo. So let's watch carefully now. And there's one more thing I need to add concerning the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins, just quickly. Matthew 25. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I want you to think about what we just talked about here. Likened unto 10 virgins and another other passages, it says bridesmaids, which is correct. Which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom, and the 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish, and them that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. The wise took oil in the vessels with them in their lamps, and while the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. They should not have been sleeping. None of them. Not even the 5 wise should have been sleeping. If we look, and folks, at this particular time, at the time of the end, Paul, when they shall say peace, point, what happened? Well, we'll click this. You yourselves know perfectly that the day of Jehovah's wrath so comes as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. All right. I'm going to prove to you today that in the story of the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins, that there is actually a third entity. Now, in the parable, he only points out 2 entities. Watch this, folks. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day should overtake you as a thief. You are the children of the light and the children of the day. We are not of the night and darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep. Huh? It says right here in Matthew 25 that they all slumbered and slept. Paul says, don't sleep. How then did the 5 wise meet the bridegroom? Some of you are going to get very angry for what I have to say here, folks. I will continue with the words of Paul. Let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. For they that are sleeping, they sleep in the night. And they that are drunk in the night. All right. And he says, but let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and the helmet, the hope of salvation. Because Jehovah has not appointed us to wrath. Well, guess who else was not appointed to wrath? The day of Jehovah's wrath that is to come. Israel. Who is Paul talking to? Gentiles. Thessalonians. So, I'm here to tell you that I'm convinced that in the story of the 5 wise and the 5 foolish virgins, you see they were all sleeping. They were all sleeping. So if, according to Paul in Romans 11, verse 26, that Israel is not appointed unto wrath on the day of Jehovah's wrath that's coming, they're going to be sleeping. Israel is the 5 wise. And the Gentiles are the 5 foolish. You see, Israel, they're waiting for their Moshiach to come, and the Gentiles are waiting for their Jesus Christ, who's a fake and a fraud, because there was never a Savior of Israel whose name was Jesus Christ. That is a Greco-Roman name. Yehoshua was not given a Greco-Roman name by Jehovah, his father. No. So, they're both sleeping, but one of them has oil in their lamp, and the other oil besides the oil in their lamp. The other one has gone out. I am telling you today, the oil ran out of Christianity's lamp in 325 when Constantine took over. And what does he say right here when he says, and afterward the other virgins came? Well, you can look at the chapter before. When he sits on his throne of glory, he's already there. That means all Israel is going to be there too. And here comes the Gentiles right here. Is it, no, is it 24? Which one is it? I thought it was chapter 24. Okay, let me see if I can get back there. Hold on. It's in the same chapter. Why didn't I see it? Sorry about that, folks. All right. Same chapter. Look. Now when the Son of Man shall come in his throne of glory and all the holy angels with him, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is the elect. Paul said Israel is the elect for the patriarch's sake in Romans 11 verse 26 or 27. It says right there. Going to gather his elect. All right, so the elect are already going to be gathered. Then he shall sit upon his throne of glory, and before him shall be divided the Gentiles. Shall be gathered the Gentiles. Gentiles. They come later. It's in the same chapter, folks. Don't you get it? And he will separate them. So of the 5 foolish, there are going to be some that he's going to accept. Believe it or not. Why? As a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats, and he will set the sheep on his right. Why are they sheep? And the king will say to them on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation. And look, these are Gentiles, folks. I have proven it to you before. Ethnos, a race, a nation, people, the nations, as distinct from Israel. Gentiles. These are not Israelites. The Israelites are going to be gathered. And those who walk in the light that Paul was talking about, those who, of the Gentiles who are awake, they will be saved along with Israel. But the ones who were sleeping, Yehoshua is not interested in condemning any of them who were sleeping, who were kind to the Jews. No, he wants them to. That is how kind he is. So now that we have context, folks, now that we have understanding, he says, I was hungry and you gave me meat. No. The righteous among the nations, those that still are walking in their idolatry and all that, with their Jesus Christ and all that, bowing down and worshiping their images, an exception is going to be made for those who did this for the Jews when they were in their trouble. I was hungry and you gave me meat. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. Naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came unto me. Then the righteous will answer him saying, Master, when did we see you hungry or fed you? And when did we see you a stranger and took you in? Irene Good? Have you ever heard of her? Or clothed you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and came unto you? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, because you have done it to the least of one, uno, just one. He's looking for any excuse, folks. Any excuse at all to save them. And if they have done any act that you see right there to just one, but wait a minute, not just one now, one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. And the rest he will say to them, I know you not. It's in the same chapter, folks. I think he made himself very clear. So the least you can do, folks, is stay awake and have your extra oil with you and be kind to the Jews, for crying out loud. Isn't that the least you can do? President Trump, don't be messing with the Jews' gold. Don't be helping any of your entourage mess with the Jews' gold, because if you do, it is going to be the stumbling block that cause your iniquity.